without further ado, I would like to welcome to the stage Pat Gelsinger and Nicholas Kelez. Pat, again, former CEO of Intel. I just want, thank you, it's such a pleasure. Hi, Nicholas. Yeah. Thank you both. And Nicholas Kelez. So first, Pat spent roughly 35 years across 2 stints at Intel, its last as its CEO. Nicholas is the CEO and CTO of Xlight, a semiconductor startup that's developing breakthrough EUV laser technology for next generation chip making. Was in the news this week, which many of you probably saw, a big splashy piece in the Wall Street Journal, which we're gonna dive into today. Before founding Xlight, Nicholas led quantum computer development efforts at PSI Quantum, which is a Playground global brand, and spent 20 years building large-scale, really large-scale, X-ray science facilities and national labs, including SLAC and Lawrence Berkeley, where he served as chief engineer for the LINAC coherent light source. And Pat, very notably, is executive chairman of the board. So thank you both.
Thank you.
So guys, tell me what you are building, first and foremost.
Well, maybe I'll start. And part of the reason I came to Playground was because of Xlight, because I was so excited about the technology. And I have this long-term mission to continue to see Moore's Law, right, in the semiconductor industry. And part of the objective at Intel was seeing that occur. And let's pretend we're building a $25 billion fab, right, to be a leading-edge semiconductor fabrication center. About half of the capital goes into lithography. And it's been that way since the beginning of the semiconductor industry. Lithography is the center of semiconductor manufacturing, and in the middle of a lithography machine is light. The most important thing for lithography is light. God said, "Let there be light." And with that, being able to continue, Nicholas knew I was going to do that, right? It was my favorite line when I talk about his company. Yeah, not the first, not the last either. But this ability to keep innovating for shorter wavelength, higher power light, is the essence of being able to continue to innovate for more advanced semiconductors, finer line pictures, improving, capabilities in that light source, and that's exactly what Xlight is doing. So, job one is plug into the scanners, the ASML machines of today, but second is as I like to call it, Moore's Law has been taking a nap. Time to wake it up, right? And we think this is the technology that will make up Moore's Law.
And guys, tell me a little bit more. So did you meet at your last company, and did he pull you out of there, or how did this all come together?
No, as Pat said, we met here at Playground through Xlight. So he came to meet us at Xlight, got a chance to meet him, and yeah, this is absolutely something you do not do. I could not have imagined at the time that it would work out as well as it has. It's been an incredible amplification of Xlight. We are incredibly different people from different backgrounds, but have, I think, formed a very complementary relationship. We have a tug and pull that we have on each other.
I call it kick in the butt, but anyway.
And every now and then I have to push back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been fantastic. But we met at Playground, and the relationship has just ramped from there.
And so what's changed that's making this technology viable now? Because there is a company in the Netherlands that has sort of the whole picture, including a laser technology that you think you can improve upon, and you, in fact, want to partner with them. But why is now the moment?
Yeah, it's a very fair question. And it's actually, I'll start with the fact that ASML pursued this solution almost a decade ago. So they knew this was an option, and perhaps even a better option at that time. But the difference was the technology wasn't as mature. The market space wasn't mature. At that time, there was only a handful of EUV machines out there. Not everybody had adopted it yet. So it just wasn't the time to take on something completely new and orthogonal. And plus, the industry had spent tens of billions of dollars on the incumbent technology. So that came out of the national labs, so it had a similar arc. But it was decades in the making and billions of dollars of investment, so it wasn't the right time to change. Fast forward a decade, Now EUV is ubiquitous. Every leading edge semiconductor is made with it. And the technology that they started with has reached its kind of end of life. So the machines are already capable of more. So they're capable of better patterning, they're capable of better productivity, better economics. It's just the light source. So that's where we take this technology, we build, the key concept, and I don't want to spend too much time answering this one question, but the key concept is to go away from building an integrated light source with a tool, which is what they do now. And so that fundamentally constrains you to make it smaller and less powerful. So we treat light the same way you treat electrical power or HVAC. We build outside the fab at utility scale and then distribute in. And that gives you this opportunity to just elevate much higher the power, the control, and then what Pat kind of highlights, it also gives you this extensibility. So we can build at the fab, and we can satisfy the need with EUV right now, and then be the platform for the future.
Yeah, and these things are big, right? It would be 100 meters by 50 meters. When you think about it, think about SLAC over here, the linear accelerator. They're big, they're powerful, and they feed lots of scanners, not just one scanner. And given that that's what you did for 25 years of your life, building those kind of things, you're uniquely qualified to build this kind of thing.
I do want to qualify. So SLAC is 5 miles or 5 kilometers long. This is only 100 meters, so it's a little different in scale. So I don't want to scare anybody.
So 3 miles versus a football field, essentially.
Yes, exactly. And that's really part of what has changed. The technology has gotten much more mature. Again, coming back to your question, it's gotten much more mature. That's made it ready to go from the science facilities to commercialize at a fab.
And the current machine's 13.5 nanometers. It is a byproduct of the physics of tin, right, that is heated and splattered with laser, and we expect this to be able to scale to below 2 nanometers of light. It really is magic what it's going to enable in the future. Far more energy efficient and being able to deliver far more target power to the wafer, meaning you can expose much more rapidly. So it's going to change the economics as well as give new life to Moore's Law, for many generations of smaller geometries in the future. This is pretty magical.
Guys, so ASML spent decades building this technology, billions of dollars. You explained why you don't need to do that again. Why, the sort of standard incumbent question, but they see you coming. Why can't they just do what you're doing right now? And why can you move faster if that's what you're arguing you can do?
Well, the first thing is, right, we want to work, this is to enable their next generation machines. We don't view this as competing with them. We view this as how do we enable more out of their machines, into the future. And as Nicholas said, they were working on this, they stopped working on it, and now we think, many of these technologies from the US national labs enables this magic time and some of the breakthroughs that Nicholas and his team have done. This is the technology, this is the team, and now is the time.
So, of course, the big news here, a second part of it, is this investment by the U.S. government. The Wall Street Journal had reported that the government will become Xlight's largest shareholder.
Not true.
Right, I was going to say, and then I saw you talk to Axios and call it a minority investment, so minority investment.
Yeah, they're the second biggest.
Okay.
We're the biggest at Playground.
Okay. What valuation did they invest in the company? Did we get a good deal as taxpayers?
So the bottom line, yes, taxpayers will do well, which they should. They're putting money in. Look, we're at the LOI stage. So there's still a lot of negotiation to go. So those details are not worked out yet.
Oh, that's interesting. So this could conceivably not materialize.
Or it could be twice as big.
Oh, that's also interesting.
No, it's not going to be twice as big. We will get this done. But it's at the LOI stage, and we've agreed in principle on the terms. But like any of these contracts, there's still work to get done, to finish the agreements. We've also finished the LOI with New York, right, where the first machine will be built at the New York Create sites near Albany. So, a lot of work's been done, but we have to get it done. And ultimately, we got to build one of these things. Right? And then we got to get it hooked up to scanners, and then we got to start exposing wafers. There's a lot of great work to be done, but we feel very confident, and obviously the secretary and the deputy secretary, making this the first agreement of the new CHIPS program office, that really is a big statement. They believe in this, excited about it, and believe it as central to the future semiconductor industry in America.
And how much does this company need? So you expect to have a product in 2 years, or 2028?
So we will complete the prototype in 2028 and then connect it to a scanner, exposing wafers. We believe it's possible to have the first commercial system online in 2029.
And so you've raised $40 million from Playground. You were in the process of raising this money from the government. I mean, do you need many billions of dollars to get to the
No,
finish
fortunately,
line?
this is not fusion or quantum, which is one of the reasons I moved. Peter's laughing. No, so this is, again, this is a seed, a foundation for a raise we're going out for in January. That, depending on the size, and again, these are things that have yet to materialize, but we're working through, potentially could be the last round, potentially more, but it's a much different scale than some of those others. We don't need billions. We potentially have line of sight to additional capital outside of venture capital to be done after this raise.
I mean, this is exciting. I wasn't paying attention to this space at all. Now it seems like everybody's paying attention to this space. If you see ASML's stock price, it's been sort of like ticking up pretty quickly these last few months. I think partly, too, because Peter Thiel seems to be paying attention to this as well. He just put one of his Thiel fellows, whose name is escaping me right this second, in charge of a company called Substrate, which seems to be going after this exact same thing. No?
It's not quite exactly the
Okay.
same. So basically, if Substrate is successful, they could be a customer for us. We deploy our light source at the fab, connect, in our case, we want to connect with ASML tools, but we want to connect with other tools, metrology, inspection, next generation lithography. So we actually could be a provider to Substrate. They're focused on a lithography scanner. They want to build the full stack, but ultimately they need actually a free electron laser in order to enable the scanner that they're pursuing.
That's interesting. Have you talked to them?
You could say that.
Have you talked to ASML?
Absolutely. So as Pat highlighted, in fact, I was just recounting this story to some friends. First contact with ASML, first time we visited, was literally this week 2 years ago, December 2023. It was December 1st, 2023. It was actually, for those who know ASML, it was Martin Vanderbrink, who's an absolute legend. He was their CTO. It was his last day. Theoretically, we were at, I think, a 5 o'clock meeting, so we had the last meeting with Martin on his last day.
Yeah.
So it goes back a long way.
Yeah,
And
and
we've been working ever
enabling
since.
ASML is the right thing for the industry because that's what they've invested in. They've put hundreds of billions of dollars into ASML scanners, and if we can make them better, that's a huge win for the ultimate provider. The TSMCs, the Intels, the Microns. Those are the people who need this technology to enable their next generation process technology. So that's the ultimate beneficiary. Is servicing the customers of ASML, and doing that with ASML is exactly what we're trying to do.
That's great. Just to be really clear, they are on board. They're going to buy this technology from you.
We're working very closely with them right now to basically design how we integrate with an ASML scanner. So we're working with both them as well as their providers, Zeiss, who does their optics. So yes.
And they're not the purchasers of X-Lite. We're building these utility scale capabilities outside of the fab. So essentially, they'd be capitalized outside of the fab, and providing light to an Intel, a TSMC, Global Foundry. So it's changing the technology, but also the business model of how light is provided. So it becomes light as a service. So it's a new business model as well.
Has Intel committed to buying this technology?
Nobody has.
No, okay.
Right, but the work is going on with everybody on the list that you would expect, and we're having intense conversations with all of them.
Great. Pat, I wanted to talk to you a little bit, of course, about Intel.
What a surprise.
I know. And I got the sense that you were tired of these questions, too, in that FT lunch, which I really enjoyed, by the way. But it's been reported that Intel's board fired you, but Louboutin is following your exact strategy. Do you ever think they should have just hung on for 6 more months?
Well, let's say, in many respects, as has been widely reported, I wanted to finish what I started at the time, and that was 5+ years. That said, they're on the strategy that I worked hard for. I was very pleased when they hit the 18A milestones. key process technology milestones, and they need to become a big foundry for the industry. So some of the more recent rumors are very positive. That said, I'm in a great place now. What I'm doing here at Playground, with companies like Xlight, but working with 10 companies, game-changing companies, and being able to help 10 companies, 10 founders, 10 CEOs do game-changing things. That's a pretty exciting way to leverage where I am in my career. Also doing companies like Glue, our faith tech company that we launched, and I gave my wife back for weekends, that she gets from me. It's not a 7x24 assignment, so I get to see more of my grandkids now.
That's really great.
Get calls on the weekend.
Yeah. But remember, I tell you, I want the report on Monday, and I'm going to with my grandkids. So anyway, but 7x24.
The FT also reported that you said the CHIPS Act implementation under the Biden administration was hideous, and you were very upset about how long it took. Now you're working with a very different commerce department under the Trump administration. You clearly expect a different outcome this time. Tell me a little bit about why.
Well, as I said, I was delighted that we got the bipartisan CHIPS Act done. Right, this is one of the most significant pieces of industrial policy. It was bicameral, bipartisan, getting it across the line. This was thrilling. And then 2.5 years later, no money was dispensed. That's what I thought was hideous, right? And then it was pushed out the door at the last minute in a very political way. I think it was very poorly executed. And what I said on CNBC this week was, this administration has a sense of urgency. Right? And to me, our competition didn't wait 2.5 years. Right? They have kept moving forward. We must move forward with urgency, and that is an aspect of this administration that I'm pretty excited about. Right? And if they're being able to essentially stand up in office, get their first grants done, in 6 months, okay, that's a whole lot faster. And I do know that they have others in the pipeline beyond this one, but we're also very proud that this was the first one to come out of this administration.
Well, it's exciting. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how that came together. Did you pick up the phone and call Howard Lutnick, or what happened?
Amongst many phone calls, yes, he was one of them. But I'd also say the conversations with the department were well underway long before that. So this idea, right, was being incubated for.
Yeah. So again, telling the story of the meeting with ASML for the first time, CHIPS was actually a few months before that. It was October 2023. It was the first time we met with Ben Schwartz, Jay Lewis, who was heading the CHIPS R&D office at that time. So yeah, it's been a long, long road.
But as as Lutnick came into office, DeBar became the DepSec. They formed the new CRDO, right, organization. Brianna, right, and others have just been fabulous to work with. They've attacked this with urgency, because essentially it's been less than 6 months since the office was stood up and underway after all the confirmations were completed. So I believe that they are acting with a sense of urgency on what I believe is one of the most important topics for American competitiveness for the long term, and I'm proud that this company gets to be part of that.
There's obviously a lot of mixed feelings about what we're seeing with the Trump administration taking stakes in more companies. To ask a question that I'm sure you get asked or have been asked many times this week, how should people think about this? I mean, there is this libertarian ethos in Silicon Valley, and I think people really are not sure how to feel about, having the White House on their balance sheet.
Yeah, and I understand some of that trepidation that people would have associated with it, but I measure it. Is it a more effective way to bring about the outcome that we would want? Because if you looked at the Intel investment by the government, it was not good for shareholders. The stock market has responded positively, and if it causes more people to come into the Intel foundry, it's a good thing. So I'd say, measure it by the results, not by, some view of what's a good, perspective of the government taking a position in it, right? Obviously, this administration believes it's a better thing for taxpayers. I think that can be debated, but unquestionably, does it drive the results that we want and that we need to reinvigorate our industrial policies? Many of our competitive countries, don't have such debates. Right, they're moving forward with the policies that are necessary to accomplish their competitive outcomes, and to me, that's the only objective that matters. Is it making us more competitive as a nation on the most important topics that matter to us? Let's take another example. How many nuclear reactors are being built in the U.S. today? 0. How many are being built in China today? 39. right? Energy policy in a digital AI economy equals, right, the economic capacity of the nation. Our energy position is terrible, right? When we look at it, then we're under, and it will be the fundamental limiter of our ability to build AI, right? So yes, I think the agreements that were just made on nuclear were good, right? And taking positions in those companies, if it accelerates the outcome, right, that we're seeking as a nation. So, right, I think there's lots of ways that you can have, interesting philosophical debates, but at the end of the day, we should be putting every tool available to win the competitive and economic race that we seek as a nation against the key industrial policies that we have.
Wearing your VC hat.
Oh, at least some of us like it, yeah.
Wearing your hat as a VC, how would you feel about investing in a company that's not backed by the government if it's put its sort of chips in front of a rival? Would that be a deal killer for you?
Well, I don't think it's a one, to me it's one tool, right? I've also spoken on sovereign wealth funds, right, and believe that's another good tool. I do think tariffs to accomplish our objectives is another tool. To me, it's just a range of tools, and as we will look at our investment companies, if they have aligned national objectives, to say that the U.S. government is in their cap table, I think that's a positive, right? If they're, off for other businesses or other purposes, it's probably not a good, thing for them to be. It's, what's your objectives and what are the tools available, for you to accomplish those objectives. But I think in some companies like Xlight, it is delightful to have the U.S. government, in the cap table in a minority way, in a non-governing way, but it also says we need this company to succeed for national interest.
So I did want to ask, so it doesn't have any sort of veto rights, it doesn't have a board seat. What kind of, information rights does it have?
No and no.
No, nothing.
Yeah.
I also just wanted to ask, you'd said, Pat, also in that FT story, that Trump is an intense guy. He has threatened to take the CHIPS Act money and called it horrible. I guess, we're seeing sort of varying decisions coming out of this administration all the time. Are you worried that that money could potentially disappear?
No.
Okay. All right, I have another question that you're going to really not like. I was driving here and listening to NPR on the news, and it's, it'd be another story another night, but it talked about how President Trump is targeting Somali immigrants, and he said their company stinks, and they're sending more ICE into Minnesota where there's 80,000 immigrants. I could ask this question a million ways, but you are somebody who's sort of, very focused on your faith. Politics aside, business aside, do you have any sort of moral wranglings with hitching, your company Xlight to the Trump administration, or is that naive?
Well, as I've said in other interviews, CEOs and companies should neither be Republican or Democrat. Right? Your job is to accomplish the business objectives, serve your investors, serve your shareholders. That is your objective. And as a result, you need to be able to, figure out what policies are beneficial on the R side or what policies are beneficial on the D side and be able to navigate through them. That is your job as a business leader in that respect. We all have to vote our moral compasses as well. Right, and the faith aspects associated with it, right, and that may affect who you support and so on. But as business leaders, our objective is to do the best job for our shareholders and our companies, and that means you better be able to work across both parties. Right, as I say, R's and D's come and go. Defense is there forever, right? And not trying to be cynical about that, but the government will be there forever. They're an important constituent. They fund lots of the research. They have real industrial policies objective. Your job is to figure out how to work with whoever is in office, independent of your moral or political views. But then also vote your conscience as appropriate.
Well, you said you live at the intersection of faith and technology. You also mentioned that your religiosity created a bit of a kerfuffle at Intel years ago when Intel employees that were handing out your faith book in China. Silicon Valley is getting more openly Christian, which I think is
Amen.
interesting.
Hallelujah.
Trey Stevens and others. I guess, is it becoming, an edge? And also, do you think your faith influences what technologies you back?
For me, I've always viewed my faith as an edge, but in some circumstances as a negative. right? And in it, I have a very defined moral and integrity compass that doesn't allow me to do certain things, right? In business deals. So in some cases, I think it's a weakness. In other cases, hey, I think I have a superpower, right? Because I'm going to live by my ethics and integrity, even if it means I'm making a less than compelling business decision. Right? I'm going to sleep good at night, and everybody I do business with, will know that I will seek the absolute integrity in every decision, that I make. And I think that's a superpower as well. So, I think there's, different characteristics that get played out. Obviously, it's exciting to see a bit more favorability, to faith in this place called Silicon Valley. For it. I believe we need more ethics and morals in Silicon Valley, because the things that we do truly change the world. We lost it on the social networking, and I believe we need a moral compass for AI, because it's way more important than what happened in social networking. I'm proud of my faith, right? I'm happy to talk about whatever faith you would have, and I'm also happy to talk about my faith, right, and how it influences my decisions, what I live, and how I pursue, right, a higher calling every day. I show up at work trying to do the best job I can for my companies, my CEOs, but ultimately, I work for the Lord Jesus Christ, and He has a higher bar than all of those.
I wish we had another hour to talk. I have so many questions, but I just wanted to ask you, Pat, you came out of Intel. You're obviously a workaholic. You're
Not
involved
anymore.
Sure. But you're involved with 10 companies here, general partner at Playground Global. Is this enough for you?
Absolutely. Right? I mean, the idea that I could work, 7 by 24 on one company is really important. The idea that I can now influence across such a wide range of technologies. I'm a deep tech guy. At the core of who I am, what I enjoy. And, I've learned more about quantum computing and superconducting, new materials, the next leaps in AI, power delivery, nuclear uprating. My mind is so stretched here, and I'm just grateful that the Playground team would have me to join them and let me make them smarter and be a rookie venture capitalist.
Oh,
Right.
well, it's great. This is such a great place to live. Pat, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nicholas, so nice to meet you. I would
Thank
love
you.
to learn much, much more. Thank you.
Have to have me without Pat.